Welcome to day 90 of the 300 movie challenge. Today we watched the highest grossing film of November 2001, which was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, whatever you go and buy. Whatever. Why do they even bother changing it? Whatever, who cares? That's what we watched. And I'm kind of I'm the odd one out here because I have never seen any of these movies. I've never read any of these books. The only thing I've seen is the chess scene in this movie I had seen before. Even though I remembered it completely differently than what actually happens. But whatever. I'll explain that in a second. And I have seen a Quidditch game. I don't think it was the one in this movie, but I don't know which one I did see then. So, but that's it. And again, I know like some very rough, story things. Very vague, okay? Nothing specific like at all. Okay, there's like that one famous thing that like everyone knows. Which is kind of unfortunate that I know, but oh well.
It's okay.
Yeah. So
Oh
that's
wait. Oh, I know
yeah.
what.
Yeah.
Never mind. I thought you were talking about you're a wizard, Harry.
Oh, no, that's a stupid meme. But no, in terms of like actual important plot point.
Yeah.
So oh well, but again, like everyone knows that.
Should each of us give our background for these, since I think it's pretty obvious that we'll be watching all of them?
Yeah.
So
I guess.
Sabo Mai, you go. Say what your experience is.
Okay, so I have watched the first movie, the second movie, like two scenes of the third movie, the first third of the fourth movie, the end of the fifth movie, none of the sixth movie, and then both the seventh and the eighth movies. I haven't.
That's so random.
I know, right? Because like I watched these on like cable TV,
Oh.
but I did not read any of the books. However, because of my interest in the movies, I read up a couple of things, so I have a little bit of context as to how the story flows. So that's my background.
I guess I have the biggest background with this, and by no means am I nearly complete with all the books or anything. But I have watched all the movies. What I can't tell you what scenes happen in which movie because a lot of them I watched when I was younger because my older cousin was like a humongous fan of all the Harry Potter books, so thus I got dragged to the movies, usually screaming because I found them very scary at the time.
This is no exception.
Yeah, this movie was no exception. Which when I like remembered specific scenes, and I was like, I remember crying during this scene. I did not cry or was as scared about any of the things. I still couldn't watch the scene where the professor was unveiling
The climactic scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I've watched all the films and I've read most of the books. I don't remember where I stopped, but that is my knowledge and background with this.
So just so you know, going forward, this is all of our backgrounds, and we will be commentating as such.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and likewise, like my I've also read up on the lore and everything. So yeah.
It is interesting because, like, I was curious that I looked up also when the books were written, and what's interesting is that the books were, of course, written before the movies, obviously, but it wasn't like that far earlier. It was basically it was roughly, it seemed that like the movies came out like about 3 to 4 years after the books did.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what's interesting about that is therefore when they started making the movies, the book series was like not even really halfway done yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just interesting, like that. It's not like, for example, like Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings,
Lord of the Rings is the other like famous book series that became movies, but those were written a long time ago, right? Those were done.
Yeah.
So they knew what they were kind of building up to already. Where they didn't really hear. I don't think so. I mean, maybe they had like maybe. Why am I blanking on the author's name?
J.K. Rowling.
Yes, I'm an idiot. Okay. Maybe she had like already had a rough idea of like where the story was gonna go, and whoever was making the film had some knowledge. I have no idea. Okay, I don't know. But
There are
it's
probably people who would mention in the comments. Anyway, sorry.
yeah. Well, I'm just saying. So, but it's interesting because again, this is the first movie in a series, and the series they already knew it was a series, right? The series is already going on. They know there's going to be more books. There has been more books. There will almost certainly be more movies. So it's interesting in that way because they don't really have to make this a standalone movie. Right? Because
Yeah.
it's not like Star Wars where it's like Star Wars is now this big series, but like the original movie was its own thing at the beginning.
Right.
Yeah,
Where
that's
this is
true.
like it's starting not as its own thing. And it's one of those things like people often criticize like all of these more recent like, cinematic universes or whatever, where they try to like set up all this stuff for future movies without like making a good movie. And what's interesting is that this does seem to kind of set up a bunch of some stuff for future movies. And because to be honest, the actual plot of this movie is not really interesting.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, they
get Harry to school.
They get Harry to school,
Yeah.
and like they kind of find some plot thing about there's this Sorcerer's Stone and there's this person want to get it. Like that's it. Like it's not really that interesting. What's interesting though is again it's setting up the characters and it's setting up the world and how that works. And that is a good element of it. And again, because more is going to come and the plot is going to get bigger and more interesting, it's okay in the sense that the plot's not very interesting because that like there will be more, right?
Yeah.
And since again they do focus on the characters in the world, so even if the plot's not that great, you're still like, but I'm interested in the characters and I'm interested in the world and I want to see where it's going to go. So again, I think it was I'm one of those people who like as a kid, I never really liked. Of course, everyone was not everyone, but a lot of people were really into the Harry Potter books when I was growing up, and the books and the movies, and I just never really wanted to get into it because to me, I always found magic to be boring. Because I'm like, there's no limits. It's just, I can do whatever, so therefore it's like, well, that's not interesting, right? If you can do anything, then, that's boring in a sense. That's how I saw it anyway. And, it's not quite like that. And, but again, that was just my perspective of it. So it's just kind of interesting coming into this now and again, seeing this with fresh eyes. Again, like I don't really know the characterization of anybody. Like honestly, I was surprised at some of the characters. Like this is probably not the surprise people were thinking I was going to say, but I don't like Hermione. I have a feeling she's going to get better, but I don't know. I just found her like way too like much of a bitch. I'm just like, girl, calm down. And it's like okay, one thing this is so like immensely minor and picky, but how she like moved her mouth when she spoke bothered me. Like she opens her mouth like really wide. And it's like weird.
Oh my god.
I don't know. I'm like, you don't have to open your mouth like 3 inches wide. I don't know. It's bizarre. Such a minor thing. And again, I'm sure she like kind of matures and grows and like develops more. I'm sure that happens. But I don't know. I just found her like kind of annoying in this. It's not bad or anything. I was just like, oh, okay. If anything, I probably of the three, I like Ron the most. He seems, I don't know, the most earnest and the most, like, to have a character. Because, to be honest, like, Harry himself is, like, not super interesting as of right now. Which, again, I imagine he'll get more interesting later. Because he seems to be kind of, like, the chosen one kind of stereotype. It's like, okay, fine, he's a nice dude, And, again, this is all just basis now. I'm sure things are going to add it in later. That's one thing that is interesting, is that since the books and the movies, they make these movies over a period of, like, a decade. So the actors, and therefore that also forces the characters, they change, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be
It's
very
interesting.
interesting to see how that works into this as well. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how that goes. That's something I'm definitely looking forward to in that regard. Yeah, I don't know. I liked it for sure. I thought again. I think it did what it needed to do. It set things up and then said, okay, here you go. Here's what you're starting with. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'll be interested to see what happens next.
It's a good, solid start.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was kind of my take on it. It's not. I don't think it's amazing, but it's good. It accomplished what it needs to do, and I'm curious and want to see more. So it did its job from my perspective, at least.
I think so too. It was also interesting because I don't know how long ago it's been for Ryan, but for me, it's been at least over a decade since I've seen this movie.
I know I've rewatched it once or twice. I think the last time I watched it was maybe close to 10 years ago. I might want to say 9 years ago, but I'm not 100% sure.
I'm not quite sure, but so to see this movie again, it was very interesting, and the effects also were like, I thought that it would be like you can see like a humongous difference between the effects and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But they were actually pretty like fine. Like they
held out pretty
They
decently.
held up pretty well, yeah.
You could.
I thought that it would be like really bad or something like with Jurassic Park and whatnot, but it actually held up pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was like they were great, but they were.
They weren't great.
You can tell in some scenes, but otherwise, it doesn't really break your immersion. It's not distracting.
Yeah, no, the individual effects like themselves are like, again, not amazing, but how they add into just like this, I guess, kind of the visuals in general, in terms of like the cinematography and the style and the architecture and the world and stuff like that, it works really well, and that sort of environment is really well put together. So yeah, that was definitely something where I was like, oh, this definitely looks, it's a very, in terms of like a visual style, it works really well in that regard.
Yeah.
And that it is something I always forget. Is that, like, I always forget that this actually, like, is supposed to take place, like, in modern day. Because, you just hear, like, the standard, like, wizards in, like, a castle or whatever. I always think of it as, like, like Lord of the Rings, where it's, like, this medieval fantasy world. And it's like, wait, no, it's not. It's, like, it's supposed to be real life. So it's just kind of strange how, beginning of the movie, there's, like, people, like, getting into a car. And I'm like, what the fuck? But so
yes, UK in the 90s.
Yeah, it's good. I feel like I've seen like maybe very briefly some like movie trailer clip somewhere of like one of the latest movies, and I'm pretty sure there is stuff like in the normal world or whatever you want to call it, not focused just on Hogwarts.
Yeah.
So I'll be kind of curious to see if like that kind of connection where you actually get like magic stuff, but also more specifically with modern day things comes into play. I don't know. I'd be curious. But yes, that was one thing I was just like, oh yeah, it's modern stuff. Because it is interesting that it's very like, it's very, I don't know if this is the right word, but like standard in terms of like the the lore and the elements of that regard of like, it's wizards with wands and there's the brooms, you know what I mean? It's like that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's kind of cliched, but like that's also kind of like the point, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like distracting, like, oh, this, you know what I mean? But it's just, again, it's interesting just to see how this works. Oh, actually, something that I did think of, would be like if they made a game, because like apparently I know they've made like video games like based on the movies or whatever, but I think would be interesting is if they made sort of like maybe not an MMO, but like an MMO style type of game where it's like you're like just like a random person in the world.
Oh, I think
Right.
They kind of
Did
did
they have that?
with I think there's like a website. It's not an MMO. At least I don't think so. It's
Pottermore?
Yeah, Pottermore, right?
Oh, is that what that is?
I think
I've heard
'cause
that
I'm not
term
100% sure.
I vaguely remember it was like a big thing in high school where you went and you got sorted and then you like completed a bunch of things and whatnot, and then they would release it like the plot by the movie and everything.
I'm just
and
thinking of
progressive.
something like in the style of, the only thing I think
Like
of
a
right now.
standard JRPG almost.
Oh, like the thing I'm thinking of is the Knights of the Old Republic games for Star Wars, where it's like, again, you're kind of some random dude, but you're set in, involved in the events of this big, plot stuff going on.
See.
Again, so it could be kind of, so that's just what I'm thinking of, and again, maybe that does exist. I don't know, but I just did something that I thought of.
That would be pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. Huh.
Alright, one more thing that I wanted to mention was how they showed the passage of time in the movie, too.
Oh yeah, it was
Because
actually
I thought that was interesting.
pretty well done.
If you didn't see, like, the weather changes and everything and, like, the holidays, you would literally think that this took place over a span of, like, a few days to a week.
Yeah.
Which is not the case. You actually see, like, Halloween come and Christmas, and then you see the seasons change also. I think
I
that
like
was...
how the transitions were kind of subtle too. Like it's
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
like, a title card where it's like, oh yeah, now we're moving into fall and it's Halloween, because I hate
Yeah.
it when they do that.
It wasn't like a title card, nor was it like a character had to like obviously point out that the season had changed or something too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was felt very natural.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite shots was like Harry releasing Hedwig into like the sky, and you see the snow, and then the next scene you see her fly back and it's spring and it's so
Yeah.
green. The snow is gone, and that was a very nice way to get them from like winter vacation to, I guess, finals.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Sora Grace.
Oh, I will say, the one, I guess, unfortunate aspect of growing up with, in this time period with these books and movies, is that I am a white male with dark brown hair who wears glasses, whose hairstyle is rather similar to Harry's style.
Right.
So I was called Harry Potter all the fucking time, and it was really obnoxious.
Actually, yeah, now thinking about it, you do look a lot like Harry
Yeah,
Potter.
isn't it great? So
Should we insert a thing where we dress him up as Harry?
no,
Yes,
fuck you.
I think that's a great
No, I
idea.
hate you. You suck and I hate you. I have editing power.
Well,
I will
this
not
changes
edit.
eye conviction.
I will not put
He's
that
editing, so we
Ha.
can't do anything
in.
about
Ha. That's what you get.
We'll just we'll put a link in the thumbnail or something.
it. Ugh.
In the description.
You all suck and I hate you. But yeah, so that was just something, and I was just like, oh, whatever. I don't know. Oh, there's something else I was gonna say, and I forgot what it was.
Actually, if you can't remember, there was something that I should have said like a little while ago, but
What?
I'll say it now. But so when you mentioned the whole like thing with setting up the world in the first book / movie and stuff, just from a writer's perspective right now, because like we're kind of doing a thing, like me and Tara are doing a thing, so it's interesting to see how someone else developed their world,
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
just from like a purely writing standpoint. It's very interesting to see like how J.K. Rowling and then subsequently the director of this movie, how they chose to introduce things not just through the subtext but also through visuals.
That's true.
So I thought that was just very interesting to see how she did that, and I might consider maybe reading the books now, just because I felt like this is a very strong way to introduce your world and how it works without it being too like in your face and exposition-y.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's something a
'cause-
lot of authors suffer from, like with fantasy or magic and things like that.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, how she introduced it, it didn't feel like you were suddenly reading a textbook and stuff, because you're
Yeah.
seeing it from the eyes of these first-year students, too. So it's also a bit of wonderment for them, too.
Yeah.
So to introduce it in that way, and for them to ask the questions that you're also asking in your mind, was just, like, a very nice lead into like a lot of other things too. Like you saw them get on the broom for the first time. You saw them go to their classes and experience things and learn about different spells and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's how a lot of like other authors afterwards either alluded to or downright ripped off the whole concept of like a magic school to be kind of like to kind of use it as that kind of medium. But I feel like a lot of the other ones haven't done it as successfully as like J.K. Rowling did or X-Men did. Even X-Men, it was also implemented very well. But then you see all these knockoffs that came after Harry Potter, where it's like, oh yeah, we're going to a magic school, except now you have a harem in anime, and it's something that, like, the whole thing of other authors ripping off something that was very successful, it always irks me when I see that, because, like, you just see how someone's trying to kind of cash in on the success of someone else. So that's
Harem Potter.
Oh my god.
I'm so proud of
I
myself.
will say one thing, I guess, that interesting lead-in, which was there is diversity.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
like the one black character in the background.
Yeah, but I know later on there are actually. I was very surprised to learn this when I was watching the movies and everything, because I felt like so happy. But they're actually Indian characters in like.
Oh yeah, you mean like when they cast people?
Yeah. They're actually Indian in the book too. So I was just like, I'm so happy.
It's very hard to come across like Asian representations.
Yeah, so it was. I remember feeling like very happy about that. I was like, oh my god, because usually people kind of forget about us when they cast Asian roles.
It's very unfortunate with the whole casting situation and just writing Asians into people's books. Any other?
Wait, Valen, did you remember what you
No.
were gonna say? Maybe you need Neville's thing.
Oh yeah, the ball.
Yeah, I forgot. What was it called again?
The what?
The
The
ball.
ball that he used to like remember things, except it doesn't tell you what you forgot.
Oh.
I forgot what it's called though.
Yeah, I don't know what they called it. Well. Oh, am I trying? Oh, I remember something. The Quidditch thing. We're kind of like confused about how that works exactly.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, the rules and
someone
stuff.
can explain it to us how the whole Quidditch thing works. That would be wonderful.
Because okay, so the idea is that like you get points by getting the balls through the rings. Okay, fine, like that makes sense. But then like the golden snitch thing is they said, oh, that's worth 150 points. And then they also said that, like, if you get it, you automatically win.
Yeah.
So it's like, what, you know, so my guess is that, like, it's probably something like, my guess is that the game is, like, first to 150 points is the winner.
Mm.
It's just that the Golden Snitch gives you automatically 150 points, and the idea is that, like, it's so difficult to get that, like, you can win without even trying to go for it. That would be my guess anyway, but it still seems kind of like random with the rules in that regard. It's like, how does this work?
Yeah, if anyone can kind of explain it, or if you guys know if it gets properly explained later, then that would be great.
Yeah.
Actually, so, at the camp I work at over the summer, we actually a couple times we basically played Quidditch, which basically resulted in us getting like a bunch of brooms and just like using brooms to like whack like balls into like goals and stuff like that. Which I think is like basically lacrosse, but I don't even really know what lacrosse is anyway. So I just remembered that that's what we called it, and like that was the thing that we did, and it resulted, of course, a lot of people getting hit in the face with brooms, and you know, complete disaster. But it was
It's fine. It's fine.
Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how I remembered it now. The whole like 4 houses thing, right? So I feel like this has to be explained or gone into more detail later, but I can't really think of a way that it would work later. But I was a little bit bothered. Again, this is how, like, it's kind of portrayed as, like, oh, Gryffindor is, like, the good guys, right?
Yeah.
Because that kind of automatically implies, like, the other houses aren't, and then it's like, but then, like, what's the point of them? Right?
Yeah.
Like Slytherin is portrayed as, like, oh, that's the bad house, but it's like, well, it wouldn't be a bad house. Like, they wouldn't allow that to exist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, how does that actually work? And, like, for example, you know, I can get it where it's like, I think the idea is that it's supposed to be, like, kind of what kind of drives you or whatever. And if you're more into, like, just, you know, being, like, as strong as possible, then it's like you're Slytherin or something. And if you're in terms of, like, you know, power to help with others or Gryffindor, you know, so it's something like that, I'm sure. But at the same time, it's kind of like, I don't know, I'd want a little bit more detail on that. I'm sure it's explained in some detail, or if not in the movies or books, there's at least some, like, you know, out of game kind of explanation of it, basically.
I don't know about like the purpose of the actual houses. I just know what they're based on, and that's it.
Yeah. I agree with you that it's kind of... I wish that they gave more screen time to the other houses.
Especially like Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff.
Yeah, because all the main characters are either in, well, at least that I can remember, and as you see in this movie, are all in Gryffindor, and they're all in Slytherin. But you see like one person go to Hufflepuff, and then that's it. You don't really see...
Yeah, we literally know zero about Ravenclaw, and we know that there's one person who, again, we know nothing about this person going to Hufflepuff. I'm pretty sure, I know they tell like Hufflepuff's to be like a joke, but it's like, I still don't get like what the joke is. Like, what, you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know, it's just kind of weird that like that. And again, you'd feel like if they were going to really go into any detail, this would be the movie to go into the detail on it. Right. This is where you set things up. So now I'm just like, well, how is this going to come up again? I don't really understand.
Not only that, but then it's like, even in the Quidditch match, where they could have made it so that they played like a different team, they intentionally made it Gryffindor and Slytherin instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh!
And it's just like...
Oh, go ahead.
And it's also at the end of the movie, when you hear about like the placements and everything, you're just like, it's kind of what you would like, it's kind of a cliche setup where you expect Hufflepuff to be at the bottom, Ravenclaw to be third, and then the two houses where the main characters you are to be in first and second place.
But no, even then though, they did the whole thing where it's like, oh, Gryffindor was last, but then he's like, oh, but there's bonus points which put them into first. I'm like, but what was the point of that?
I don't know.
If anything, I think it would have been way more interesting if they just kept it. No, Gryffindor got last, Slytherin won. Like,
or even if like Ravenclaw
or like if
won.
one of the other two houses won, and then we got to actually see who's in the houses.
Yeah, or something. But again, even if you want to focus on those, you know, this whole kind of Gryffindor-Slytherin rivalry, they should have had Slytherin actually be the winners. I think that would have made it more interesting in terms of
and
the
then
setup.
have it be like a background thing in the movies, like which house is going to win and stuff.
Yeah, that would actually, because again, it turns it into just like, oh, here's Gryffindor, the good guys. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, I get that, like, that's where the protagonists are, but it's still kind of like, I don't know, it just kind of made it made it a little bit too simple for me.
Yeah.
In a sense, in terms of
I
how
would
it's
have
presented,
liked it better if they split up the main characters over a bunch of houses than if, like, Draco was actually in Gryffindor and everything.
I think I've seen somewhere that like Ron was technically supposed to be in Hufflepuff and like Hermione was technically supposed to be in Ravenclaw. And then Harry was technically supposed to be in Slytherin or something, but I'm not really 100% sure about that. It was like something like a fan theory I saw somewhere. But it would have been pretty interesting if they were split up, and then because then in the end, like, everyone can win one book, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's also, like, again, going back to the whole thing with, like, the bonus points at the end, I'm just thinking about, like, you know, it's not like everyone in Slytherin is, like, Draco, right? You know what I mean? Some of them are, like, I'm sure, like, decent people. So I'm like, think about it from their perspective. It's like, oh, we got all the points. It's like, wait, Gryffindor gets all these bonus points to beat us. They'd be like, what the hell? Like, that's so cheap, right? like I get it as kind of, oh, stick it to Malfoy, he's a dick, but it's like they're not all dicks, right? So
They're not all Malfoy.
Yeah, so it just
And
seems
then
like
what about
rude.
poor Hufflepuff that was like happy about being, well, maybe not happy, but they were like, okay, at least we're not last. And then it's like, great, now we're last.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
again,
right.
ignoring the
For
protagonist.
obeying the rules and not going to see Fluffy and everything, we're last.
Yeah, I know. It's just kind of odd. I mean, again, it does it really matter? No, but
No,
it's
really.
just like a weird kind of little thing where it's kind of like story convenience that in real life wouldn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
Wizard School makes sense in real life, but whatever. Anyway, we've been talking for like 30 minutes.
Oh my god.
Well, I mean, this is one of the major
Yeah,
series.
it's
that we've watched,
understandable.
so.
I don't know. I feel like I remembered my thing I wanted to say, so I don't know. Is there anything else? I don't know.
I
don't
don't
think
think
so.
so, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
man,
Oh,
I wonder how long
I-
next will be.
One thing would be is I wish they included more pets other than just owls, cats, and toads.
And one dog.
Fluffy.
Well,
you
there was
could give
Hagrid.
Sora 2 more heads, and then we'll be fine.
Yeah, I don't really know the reason for just owls, cats, and
Well, I guess
Toads.
because you associate them with like wizards and witches, but then it's
I
like, what if someone's
guess.
allergic to cats?
yeah, then you just have like an owl which might or might not peck your eyes out, and the toad which you might not like.
No,
Just saying.
I'm pretty sure my mom would have kicked the toad out into the forest.
Not the toad.
And we all know for certain how my aunt's mom would have felt about the owl.
Yeah, big no-no in Vietnamese culture.
Well, there you go.
And you had a cat briefly.
Yeah, I don't really
Yeah.
remember anything about it. Well, next month is a biggie.
Yes.
Yeah,
Another
we
biggie.
might be talking for like an hour, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's another big series that's beginning.
Yep.
And
We might have dropped a couple hints to it in
well,
this.
yeah. It's one that I have seen, but again, quite a while ago, so I don't remember it that well. And so it'll be interesting to see for me at least see this again, and I think for you, both of you, you don't really know anything about this series, right?
I've watched the first movie.
Okay.
And I'm completely blind.
Yeah, so it'll be kind of a similar experience, just with different, as with this series, but with different people in different roles.
Yeah.
So,
Valen is now in my role.
well, it's not like I'm a master at this series or anything, but anyway.
I wasn't in Harry Potter.
Okay, fine. But yeah, that'll be next, and then we're done with 2001.
Yeah.
Whoa,
we're
okay.
I know we're approaching number 100. It's coming.
Oh boy.
It's
I wonder
scary.
what Pokemon we'll have next.
Oh my.
That's
Dun, dun, dun.
really what everyone's waiting for.
Right.
I clearly have a Stunfisk,
Oh my
and
god.
Tara has a Simipour,
Oh my god.
and Mai has a Feebas.
I mean, it grows up to be something better, at least.
Only if you shove pharmaceuticals down its throat.
Oh my god.
Okay, let's end this
Okay.
now.
Oh, Lord.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.